everyone, and welcome back to the officially unofficial NSLI-Y podcast. My name is Anusha.
My name is Isaac, and we are from the 2023-2024 Russian cohort in Bishkek, Kyrgyzstan. Today we will be talking all about cohorts and what having a cohort is like. But first I'd like to kind of formally apologize that this episode is kind of coming late, but after this one there are many more episodes sure to come quickly.
Yeah, so just to get started, we wanted to talk about what it was like knowing that we were going into NSLI-Y with this cohort. For example, I think both Isaac and I had a couple options before we settled on NSLI-Y. For me, I was also offered a seat in participation at Flex, Georgia, and I decided to reject. But for a lot of people, I guess the cohort was a factor. For me, it was not really, but now if I could go back in time and choose again between the two, I think the cohort would be a big factor in my decision because I've had the cohort during NSLI-Y. And so just to state the differences a little bit, for Flex and Yes, you have a much smaller cohort than you would with the NSLI academic year. I think it ranges from about 4 to 6 people, and you are placed around the city and you can go to different schools. And this is because they're more culture focused programs. So because NSLI, we're all learning the language together, we're placed together. And so if Isaac wants to talk about his experience with that.
Yeah, definitely. So I was accepted into Yes Abroad for Indonesia, and I had a really difficult time kind of choosing between the great opportunity of going to study abroad in Indonesia for that cultural exchange or picking this language kind of focused study in Bishkek, Kyrgyzstan for Russian. And I think one of the biggest factors for me was the fact that NSLI-Y has a big focus on the cohort. You're kind of with your group. Right now we're with our group of, there are 11 of us in our cohort. We spend a lot of time together. We end up conversing a lot and getting really close. Whereas the Yes Abroad cohort actually are spread across, like I've talked with people who would have been in my cohort this year, and they're spread all throughout the country of Indonesia, like hours apart by car from each other, or by boat because it's Indonesia. And while I think Indonesia would have been an amazing opportunity and I would have had an amazing time, I am glad that I chose NSLI-Y for Bishkek because the cohort has been one of my favorite parts about my year here. And I think it's just important to note that different students kind of will want different things, and it's just a very big factor of study abroad. Especially when you're studying abroad on like a specific program, especially kind of State Department ECA programs. And it's just very important to kind of note, like, do you want to have a cohort? How big do you want the cohort? How kind of often do you want to see them? How big do you want them in your life abroad? Because they do provide a very kind of solid support network of fellow Americans who are in the same situation and can be there for you if you're maybe going through a tough time or just to relate with you and have a good time.
Yeah, so based on everything that we said for like factors of choosing between the two, I am really happy that I chose NSLI. I do really value the cohort as an aspect of the program, and I think it just makes a lot of things so much easier. But to move into what it was like meeting the cohort, so in our cohort we have 11 students, and we all had pre-departure orientation in Washington, D.C. And so when we met each other, all we knew about each other was we made a pretty ratchet Instagram group chat, and not many people talked in that. So yeah, and also on top of that, NSLI has some pre-departure work that they ask you to do, and in that one of the assignments was to have an intro video. And so basically that's all we had going into meeting each other for the first time. And this did make for some very interesting interactions because I mean, there's only so much you can say in a 1 minute video, and so there were some red flags, and there were some characters that were a little bit questionable. That I think after we've all become friends and stuff, we love to talk about how, oh, your first impression for me was like not a good one. I was actually really scared of you.
Definitely, like my first impression of you was a lot of red flags, a whole golf course there.
Okay.
No, but definitely, it's fascinating. Kind of, I even learned from the experience of kind of like creating those intro videos and watching everyone else's, which apparently some people didn't even watch everyone's intro videos, which kind of shocked me. I really wanted
I don't
to kind
think
of.
I watched yours.
Okay, all right, and that's another red flag getting added to the books. But I definitely think that kind of making those like quick judgments from the intro video and then actually a month later or months later kind of meeting those people in DC and then now having spent the entire year with them, it is such, honestly, I think I've learned a lot from even that. Like, don't make like judgments too quick. Like, people can like obviously be different. Don't judge a book by its cover, obviously. I'm going back through first grade and learning my lessons. But the I definitely do think I mean, we can kind of brush on the fact that NSLI has like some even before you go for pre-departure orientation, which kind of preps you for the year, they have a few resources to kind of help you even for that pre-departure orientation. There's like something called NSLI-Y 101, which has some very minimal language practice, and then like that time to meet the cohort.
Yeah, so it was honestly such a relief meeting the cohort for the first time and realizing that they were a lot more normal and a lot nicer than I had expected.
Some of them.
Oh, care to explain? No,
Not Anisha.
But also, it also was a really great conversation starter for when we were sitting around the table. And obviously there is going to be some awkwardness. Like our conversation would die out like every couple minutes and we'd be like, we had one person specifically just always being like, okay, somebody talk. Or we were always asking for an icebreaker because when it's like 11 people meeting for the first time, obviously there's like, it's the conversation isn't going to be like as fluid as you expect. But it does help that we are all so different and we have such different backgrounds and we've lived such different lives. Like we're all from different states and that makes for some great stories. Like for example, one girl in our cohort is from North Dakota and she is basically everything you would expect of a North Dakotan. So that made for some great stories. I genuinely think a lot of our silence was filled by her telling us about her weird food cravings and how there are like 7 people in her class.
6.5, I think.
So I think it was really easy to get. Obviously there is some awkwardness, but that like dissipates over the year, and I honestly think we did a really good job of like introducing ourselves at pre-departure orientation.
Yeah, we definitely got really close over those just like 2.5 days. And to clarify, we're not all from different states, but like there are we're from like a wide variety of states, and obviously it changes every year kind of where people are from. I know in one of the previous years apparently there were a lot of people from the south of America. Now we're pretty spread. Although we have a lot on the East Coast, we have like multiple in Virginia, multiple in Pennsylvania.
East Coast, West Coast.
Midwest, Best Coast.
Oh,
and
that's
then,
not a coast.
And then we have, I'm from Minnesota, and then we have another guy from Minnesota as well as that girl from North Dakota. And then, yeah, we have like a girl from California, one from Texas. So they do, there's a pretty good spread, like state-wise, as well as kind of between private school and public school, between kind of religion, between race. There's, I mean, I think one thing to note is that when you're going into a year of study abroad, you're kind of expecting the culture shock and the new things that come with kind of transporting your life and moving to a completely new culture, a new people, and a new country. But it's also important to note that you'll also kind of have a bit of culture shock within the cohort itself, even like different states in the US. Honestly, even with people in the same state, maybe I've had some culture shock moments with like the other guy from Minnesota.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's been a great like kind of source for conversation. I think I've learned a lot more about the US and the states just from kind of meeting all these people from different states. Because normally it's kind of, I don't know how often, at least I from Minnesota, meet random people from different states.
So then after like pre-departure orientation where you get to know these people like as a better first impression, obviously like some friend groups are going to form and like the dynamics are going to change, and that's why I think orientation is a really great way to gauge like who you click with and stuff like that. And just to be honest, like groups are going to form. Like you can't go everywhere and with 11 people in the country. That would actually be ridiculous. And like if you went to a bazaar with 11 people, like the locals would want to kill you.
The prices would be 10 times their normal prices.
Oh, for sure. If they hear you speaking English, that price is getting raised.
Yeah, but despite the kind of natural formation of groups in the cohort, there are still activities that we kind of do as a cohort together. I don't know if that goes for every cohort. I know some cohorts don't very often hang out, but at least within our cohort, we at least for every birthday we kind of spend that together. We celebrate. And then also, we recently had like a picnic before we leave, which was very fun. We went to a local park. Some people made some dishes. Some people brought some snacks, and we kind of sat down and enjoyed the nice weather and the beautiful parks in Kyrgyzstan.
Yeah, so I would also say that our cohort, in comparison to cohorts that I've heard about in the past, I feel like we have pretty minimal drama, and therefore, like, we get along really well when we're in a group, but obviously, we still do have smaller groups. And honestly, those also depend on a lot of factors. Like, if you're willing to spend money out of the stipend, like, you have to find people who are willing to do that. Or, if some people prioritize like spending more time with the host family or going and becoming friends with more local people. So it is dependent on you, like how much you want to like break out of the American bubble, and if you want your friend group to be with people in the cohort. So that also varies, and that definitely flows into like how often we see each other. So like Isaac said, we had a picnic the other day, and we've done some other things with the full cohort, but
Mm-hmm.
obviously in that we have smaller group meetups as well.
Yeah, like recently we went to play Mafia with most of the cohort, which was really fun. Um, but also, yeah, like Anusha was saying, kind of, I do think that like a lot of your year abroad, it's kind of up to you, kind of with the host family, with the cohort especially, like how you go about the cohort, how much time you spend with them, and kind of your relationships with other cohort members. There's a lot up to you. It's kind of like how you want to go about it. Do you want to go home after class and maybe study and be chill, or do you want to maybe hang out more or join a group? Um, yeah, and there's like a lot of things that we do with our cohort in the city. Like we love to do karaoke. We go to a bunch of restaurants or cafes because the cafe culture in Kyrgyzstan is really big. But there also will be a more dedicated, specific episode on kind of daily life in the future. So await that one.
Yeah, but I think this is like a good segue into talking about more about the American bubble and breaking out of that and how people prioritize that. I will say that I think for myself and honestly Isaac, if I'm going to speak for him, that we both spend a lot of our time with the cohort. I think we both like do have really really good friends in the cohort that we spend most of our time with, and so we are pretty in the American bubble. But that being said, like it was important to everyone like in our friend group that we do break out of the American bubble, and
Mm-hmm.
so we did things like volunteer at the American Center and lead English talking clubs, and that was a really great way to connect with locals also outside of, because we study at the American University of Central Asia. I would say the Alta population is not as diverse as you could get it in Kyrgyzstan.
Mm-hmm.
So, studying or leading talking clubs with people at the American Center has been really helpful to break out of that bubble, and it's like still a great way that you can stay inside the American bubble, like doing it with other people while also meeting other people in Kyrgyzstan and making a connection and more of a lasting step and a more of a lasting impression in the country.
Yeah, definitely. I do think kind of that might be one of the like the drawbacks of kind of the cohort experience is that American bubble that Anusha mentioned. Um, but also besides of those ways of kind of like getting out of it, like we volunteered at the talking club, and we from that talking club we kind of met other locals, and we met up with them and kind of hung out with them. So that was kind of a good source of finding people outside of not only the cohort but also the university as a whole, since it is the American University of Central Asia. So it's kind of English slash American focused. The American bubble isn't necessarily a bad thing. It kind of is synonymous with that kind of American support system with people who are in the same situation as you, coming from the same culture and transitioning their life into the same kind of new culture with you. So that American bubble is kind of useful so that you don't feel overwhelmed, so you don't feel stressed. But it's also kind of important to note that if you are coming, especially with NSLI-Y, for language learning, or even for like that cultural immersion, it is kind of important to take initiative and kind of make an active effort to reach out of that bubble, make local connections, and kind of visit local places. So you're not just going from the university to restaurants to home every day.
Yeah, and I think generally speaking about having an American bubble when you're studying abroad does have a negative connotation, but I really do think it is beneficial in so many ways because at the end of the day, with at least in Nisli, Bishkek, you live with a host family, so you're still getting a lot of Russian practice. We have language partners. All my meetings with my language partner are in Russian, and with my host family, I've only ever spoken in Russian, and so I'm still getting a lot of language practice while also having the benefits of the support system that Isaac was talking about, and genuinely, the cohort is my biggest support system in Kyrgyzstan. I think like coming from America where I had a lot more friends and like many different friend groups, and coming to Kyrgyzstan where I only had like 10 people, and then out of that I have closer people that like I really do rely on and stuff like that, was a difficult change for me, but they are the best thing and the closest thing that I have to home here. And so therefore I do think that staying in the American bubble while also experiencing things with the American bubble is really helpful and a really great support system.
And also, I just wanted to add that I think a great way to kind of use slash just kind of, yeah, I guess use, for lack of a better term, the cohort to kind of get out of that American bubble is, I know a lot of people this year have kind of, they've saw something in the city that looks really cool. Like, for example, we have a girl who saw that there was like fly yoga at a local studio. So she decided to go there and try it out, but she wanted to kind of not go alone because obviously it's like kind of a bit daunting, at least in my opinion. So she asked like a few people from the cohort, and then they went and tried it out, and I think some of them really enjoyed it, and they did it for like a month. So I think the cohort is a really good, not to dehumanize, but a really good like tool just to kind of really bad terming, a really good way to even reach out of that American bubble, even though kind of at its core, the cohort is the American bubble. I think it's just, if you're very intentional about it, it can be a very helpful aspect, even to kind of connect with local culture and try new things.
Oh, for sure. And through activities like that, you like find who you're closest to and like find people who have the same interests as you. But that being said, a lot of the dynamics of the cohort can change over the year, and because you're together for such a long time and see each other almost every day, at least your closest friends you will see like every day, and so that can be really overwhelming sometimes, but the dynamics like do change throughout the year. What we've noticed is like friend groups have like switched around and stuff like that, but it's just all like trial and error, like everything else with like study abroad. I think you just have to learn to be adaptable and just ready and quick on your feet all the time.
Yeah, definitely. Also, I think a kind of a fact about the cohort that we haven't really mentioned is that like we're kind of spread between different grades and ages, which isn't abnormal in like friend groups in high school to kind of have different aged friends. But it's definitely been interesting to kind of have people at different stages in their life and in their kind of, we have people who are juniors in high school, seniors, as well as people who have already graduated and are taking a gap year, which kind of, I mean, especially during the college application process was really highlighted. But it kind of, I guess it's just like another part of diversity, I guess, for the cohort, which kind of I think contributes to kind of the different points of views and just like the new people that you meet.
Yeah, which is honestly another way that having the cohort can be a great support system. Like, if you're doing your gap year or a year in high school and you're applying to colleges, like, and there are other people in the cohort that are also going through that, that is also a really helpful tool to have.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Actually, I can speak at that myself because I'm currently a senior. I'm graduating in approximately 8 days. And it definitely, I mean, I had to go through the college process this year, and having a couple close friends who have already been through the process last year, um, it really has kind of, they've been able to kind of like console me or kind of comfort me that like, yeah, college is important, but like wherever you go, you'll be successful. Wherever you go, it'll kind of like work out. And they've just kind of like been there with that direct experience like 9 months ago, which was helpful.
Yeah, and to add on to that, I think like because we are genuinely so young, and I feel like when you're put in a situation of study abroad, we often forget that. Like, we are only like 17, 18 years old living abroad for like 9 months. Um that's why I really value like having a cohort for my first time living abroad this much. And I know that in my life I do want to live abroad a lot. And so I think for the first time it was really helpful having a cohort and having a better sense of like my emotions. I think for me this year, one thing that I struggled with was that there are just so many factors that have changed in my life that I cannot place what emotion is coming from where, and having the cohort to like stabilize my emotions and like talk through it and things like that has been really useful for my first time being this far away from home for such a long period of time. And so for me personally, I really valued having a cohort for my first 9 months that I'm staying away.
Yeah, definitely. I don't think it's an essential factor to have a cohort the first time you study abroad, because there are definitely programs such as Yes Abroad and Flex Abroad that I think the students there are even 1 or 2 years younger than us, and they're going without like, I mean, they have a cohort, but they don't live in the same city necessarily or in the same area as the cohort. But I personally have found the cohort to be a very valuable kind of asset and just like very positive experience, as this is my first time being away from home for so long, um, and just kind of studying abroad. And I think that just kind of being this year with all of NSLI's resources as well as the cohort, it's kind of equipped me so that if I study abroad in the future, I know I can be successful without a cohort or without so much support. And it's kind of just been empowering to kind of go through this year with the cohort, kind of know how to honestly like support myself as if I'm my own cohort in the future. And I think highly of having a cohort.
Yeah, and genuinely like, at least for me, and I'm sure for Isaac too, because I'm gonna speak for him again. Um, I think like I have made lifelong friends in this cohort, and I have truly never been this attached to people in my entire life. Like,
Real.
I just see them so much, and they know literally everything about me. Like, because being abroad is just so much, and like just so much emotion and everything, and you're like always going through it, and stuff. Not like always going through it,
She's
but
always
like,
going through it.
well, no. But because you're just always experiencing so much, I'm not even kidding. I feel like I tell my closest friends here every single thing that happens to me. And I think like leaving them will genuinely be so hard for me. And it's coming up, it's in 6 days, and I don't even know how to
Oh.
cope with it. And I
Oh.
think like genuinely having a cohort has been so valuable to me, and I made such amazing friends that like understand me and have helped me grow, because there's no way you can spend a year abroad and not grow in any way,
Oh, for
physically or
sure.
mentally.
For sure. Yeah. Oh, just the thought of leaving the country, but also especially the cohort is really, I don't think it's hit me yet.
Okay, well, that is all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I really hope you guys like this episode. Again, my name is Anusha, and if you want to keep up with or just see my experiences from Kyrgyzstan, I do have an Instagram on, a broad account on Instagram, and it is at Anusha Broad. It's supposed to be like Anusha Abroad, but there are not two A's in the middle.
Good
So
job with that one.
again, this is Anusha.
And this is Isaac.
And thank you so much for listening. Please make sure to tune in to the next episodes we have coming out soon.
Bye.
Bye.